In today's episode, I'm talking about how you can be a power for good, even in a reality when some of the people you work with aren't performing up to standard or are not treating each other respectfully. Hello, I'm in Elkhorn, Nebraska today at the headquarters for reality-based leadership. I love the rare times I get to actually be at the office, and I'm taping another great episode for you. Today, we're gonna tackle what do you do when your reality includes working with a team or people who aren't at their best. So let's jump in.
An anonymous fan in Nebraska asks, how would you handle a situation where you are a high performer but are struggling with some peers who are low performers, despite efforts to help? How do you know when you are getting self-righteous versus honestly struggling?
So my immediate answer when I read this is, am I being self-righteous? Was yes, absolutely. How do I know that? Because you're doing what I call arguing with reality. See, you can have that argument, you're just gonna lose only 100% of the time. So let's take a look at this. First of all, welcome to reality. What I know from everyone's questions and their experience of reality and my experience of reality is there are some common themes. A couple of those common themes are every reality you have, there'll be people who perform at a higher level than you, and there'll be people who perform at a lower level than you. Every single reality, you'll have a boss who does some things you prefer and some things you don't prefer. Things come on a bell-shaped curve. There are always people who are operating to the left and to the right of where I'm at. So to get really happy and really successful and really capable is to stop wishing for reality to be different, but instead to really commit to succeeding given the reality that you've been handed. Now, let's see what helps us and what hurts us. First of all, I've already said it, stop arguing with reality. Here it is, you're on a team and you have some people, in your opinion, your judgment, who are performing lower than you are. I love that you practiced RBL and you stopped judging for a while and started helping. What you need to know after you stop judging and start helping is that your ego is very sophisticated. It will have you do this one thing, and when that doesn't change them, it will come back and say, see, you're right. They're the problem. See, the ego is so good at scorekeeping. The ego really feeds discontent by comparison. The ego takes you from doing a great job, loving it in spite of people performing at different levels, and makes it unfair and ridiculous and so tough. See, you loved your job when you just were in your lane, but the ego uses comparison to breed discontent. Why? The ego eats anger for lunch, and so it needs to stay mildly discontent, and an easy place to be discontent is comparing how hard you work or your performance with another. Here's what I want you to do. First of all, stop naming it. Stop naming it high performance, low performance. Stop calling it out. Stop adding judgment or evaluation to what's going on. Your reality is simply someone's not as fluent as you would like them to be. Someone's acting in ways that you don't prefer. Use that same tool I give you always to edit your story and get neutral. And when you're neutral, you need to not get passive. I'm not saying that you just give up, mind your own business, don't collaborate. Neutral is where you get expansive. So being neutral isn't passive, it's expansive. It's getting into beginner's mind, it's being open. So once you get neutral, I want you to cleanly ask for what you need. Don't expect people to read minds. And if there's things you need from others, ask them for it. Ask them when you can expect it. Ask them how you might make it easier for them to deliver what you need. Ask them how you can help. It sounds like you've already been doing that, and really listen to their answers and follow the simple instructions if you can, or decide what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. See, from neutral, none of this really has a big motive at the end. I think what is getting in your way is you are using some of the reality-based tools with some motive. See, I give you the tools so that you can stay in higher levels of consciousness and operate more skillfully in the world, live happy even when life's messy. But many times we use the tools in the hopes that somebody else will change. And I need you to use the tools without motive, without expectancy. See, you're using the tools so that you can operate at a different level of consciousness, that you can operate more skillfully in a world where people's abilities and commitments differ in this thing that we called reality. So do what you're doing for you and not to try and change them. So the first thing is get neutral. The second thing is remove your motive. The third thing I'm going to ask you to do is something I call get back in your lane. And it has to go with how the ego uses discontent to fuel its own livelihood. See, there's 3 lanes in life. There's your lane. That's where you are at times really, according to you, performing well, getting things done, being high accountable. That's lane 1. The second lane is lane 2, which is really other people's business. That's where they're working and performing, and they're giving a performance that you're labeling lower than you had hoped. That's lane 2, their business. Lane 1, your business. Lane 2, their business. Lane 3, reality's business. Why do I have to work with people who don't perform like I want them to? The universe, the setup, the reality, there's 3 lanes. If you want stress, get out of your lane. If I get out of my lane, I gotta get out helping, not judging. And by the way, if you're ever out in lane 3, you're in some big trouble because you're back to arguing with reality. And I, again, have only found that those are arguments I lose 100% of the time. So, want you to think about when you're over in somebody else's lane, focused on they're not performing, who's doing the work in your lane because you're not there? And what happens when we get self-righteous is we get under-responsible for our work in our lane and over-responsible for other people's work in their lane. When you're practicing this, the difference between self-righteousness and struggling, when you're practicing this, you'll come up with great ideas. I could simply do X. And you'll be about to be great. If you ask yourself what would great look like, you would think, I wouldn't worry about them. I would just deliver at this level. And I would tell you, go be great. And you would be about to go be great, but your ego has this kryptonite it will use on you. And it's the phrase, yeah, but I shouldn't have to. And I'd be like, dang, you were about to be great. See, this phrase the ego uses, yeah, but I shouldn't have to, is what keeps people from being great. Here's what happens. I'm in my lane, happy, free, working to the best of my abilities, and I notice somebody isn't working up to my pace, and I start to judge. And I get neutral. I go, what would great look like? Great would be, I wouldn't measure myself against them. I would just do the best I can do, even if it's more than my fair share. I would just be great. But then the ego comes in and says, yeah, but you shouldn't have to. And that gets me right back at being mad about them not doing their part. Be very careful of the ego saying, yeah, I shouldn't have to.
Anonymous in Iowa City, Iowa wants to know, what do you do when you have team members on your team who don't respect each other?
Anonymous in Iowa City, I really like the part of your question where you are asking what can I do to help rather than how you can fix it or change the behavior of others. I think it is too common right now in our workplaces where we witness or work with people who are less than respectful at times to one another. So I want to try and give you just some quick tips, and because I don't know the specifics, have you pick out which are most helpful. When I'm witnessing something, the first thing I really try and do is make sure that I'm editing my own story, that I'm not adding a name to something that isn't there. So perhaps I don't like to be teased, but I see somebody else teasing another. I may attach that's disrespectful. So I really have to reel back and make sure that this is even my battle, that this is even an issue in the eyes of the people involved. So again, it's getting back to that place of neutral and editing our stories. Secondly, if I want to change a situation, the counterintuitive thing to do is to elevate my own frequency, to change myself, because everything is connected and we're always co-creating. So I can change a situation just by changing how I present to the situation. I try and first change my own frequency, and I do that a couple of ways. First of all, I try and be the change I want to see in the world. I really watch my own language. I watch whether I'm laughing or staying silent at things that really don't deserve silence or laughter. I watch if I'm colluding with other people about folks not present, if I'm involved in conversations that aren't necessarily respectful, even if I can justify it saying I'm trying to help. I look at my own transparency. I look at my own siding with others, my opinionating, my nonverbal gestures, my comments. I want you to use this as a lesson first to see what people are mirroring to you that you could elevate in yourself. I want you to notice a theme in my response to this question. It is about elevating your frequency. It is about you coming in at a higher level of consciousness. A lot of questions are about how can I change others or how can I change the dynamics? And folks, we can't change other people and manage other people, but we can always manage energy, our energy and the energy of others. You'll notice what I'm focusing on in this answer is on ways in which that you can enter into situations at a higher level of consciousness, elevating your own frequency, because that changes everything. People like to be in tune, and they'll tune up to higher frequencies. And an important part of this is making sure that you leave space for people to save face, so that if somebody has operated out of low self and in what people might determine as a disrespectful way, the way to get them out of that is not to manage and confront them. That usually punches the ego in the face and shapes their ego and digs them in deeper. But it's the wonderful bypass that opens up space and appreciates their passion and invites them to share that differently, and then allows them space for them to re-enter our group totally forgiven in new ways, and then be rewarded for their new approach. I've tried to drop a little wisdom on you today in this episode, but I know that all of you have tons of wisdom on these very topics. Get in those comments below and share with us your best tips on how to work well with teammates not at their best. Thank you for joining me today. As always, you can submit your questions at the link below, and make sure that you are following me at Cy Wakeman all over social media. Do your friends a favor, share those links as well.